With no shortage of news to cover coming out of the NHL, you're tapped right back into your daily source for fantasy hockey news and gambling breakdowns, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And we're diving deep into all of the top buzz from around the league. The Devils got a goalie. What does it mean? Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's the summer, but we're not slacking on the fantasy hockey breakdowns. On the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, welcome back inside the lab, everybody. Shout out and much love to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. We see and appreciate y'all. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Steele, we're going to get to our continuing countdown of the top 15 fantasy D-men in the NHL today. And when you see Evan Bouchard doing his thing on the regular right now in the Stanley Cup final, maybe I should have him even higher up my list. We'll get there. But before we get there, Philip Hronek gets the bag. A major deal for the Vancouver Canucks. I want your take on that. And, of course, Pierre-Luc Dubois. I talked about a change of scenery. There you go. What does it mean? He goes from the Kings, changing scenery once again, Steele, with Washington. And the biggest news of the day, the New Jersey Devils, a team that is very much putting the pieces together right now, Steele. We talked about Dougie Hamilton the other day. He now has a number one bona fide goaltender in Jacob Markstrom. Over to you, brother. What is your take on this Markstrom trade number one before we get to everything else?
This is a massive deal for the New Jersey Devils. It makes them into a playoff contending team automatically with Jacob Markstrom in the crease, as well as getting Dougie Hamilton back for a full season. Hopefully he's back for a full season, but this is major news for them. And the fact that it only costs Kevin Ball and a first-round pick, which is top 10 protected, massive deal for the New Jersey Devils. Yeah. Tom Fitzgerald gets it done again. This is solidifying them as one of the deepest and high potential teams for the next decade of what they've done right now. I know Jacob Markstrom is a 35, 36-year-old goalie, but this changes the landscape and the aspect of what this team means, at least for the next 3 to 4 seasons. Jacob Markstrom's fantasy value is going to go up exponentially now. Again, you said it yourself on yesterday's episode. The New Jersey Devils defensive core is one of the most promising defensive cores coming up in the NHL right now. Dougie Hamilton, Simon Nemec, Luke Hughes, like we've talked about, a few, Jonas Siegenthaler as well. Lots to love about this defensive core and what they now bring in Jacob Markstrom into the blue paint. I'm not exactly sure who's going to be backing him up, whether it's Nico Dawes or
likely to be probably Allen.
Is it going to? Yeah, Jake Allen is a solid backup goaltender. He gets it done in that backup role. But I really love this trade. It's great from Tom Fitzgerald. Again, great deal from him. But Jacob Markstrom's fantasy value, when we talk about top 10, top 15 goaltenders coming off the board, we're going to have to take a serious look at Jacob Markstrom now because of what he's going to be in the situation with the New Jersey Devils and the team in front of him. So it's going to be very interesting, but it's a huge win for the New Jersey Devils. And honestly, the Calgary Flames had to get something done eventually. They get a first-round pick. It is top 10 protected, obviously, but they get a pretty good prospect in Kevin Ball as well on the blue line.
If this is the Jacob Markstrom of 2 seasons ago, the guy that put up a 2.22 goals against, led the league with 9 shutouts and had a 9+20 save percentage, Steele, then we can start talking about this Devils team as, if considering where they were only 2 playoffs ago, knocking on the door for the conference final. I think you have to take a look at them as a very serious threat to do the same thing next season. Obviously, we're not even done. We're not even gone through the July 1st window. We don't know what the rest of the teams in the East are going to do, but we know we love what's going on up the middle. Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes. We know we're loving some of those young pieces, Dawson Mercer and others. Let's see what this means now for the overall confidence of this team. Because last year, Jacob Markstrom, 23, 23, and 2, 905 save percentage. doesn't jump off the page. He is far and away the best goaltending option that they have had for a number of seasons. That is a difference maker for obvious reasons. And now, the rest of that Eastern Conference, Tom Fitzgerald took his shot very early on here in the Summer Steal. The cup hasn't even been lifted, and the New Jersey Devils are putting this conference and definitely the Metro on notice that they're here and they're going for it. Not in the future, right now, next season. Speaking of which, how do you feel about this Pierre-Luc Dubois situation? If you're okay with it, because we got to get to Hronek, we got to get to our demon. I'm sure we're going to have some disagreements there. However, Pierre-Luc Dubois in Washington maybe gets a chance to play with Ovechkin, the best goal scorer to ever do it. Darcy Kuemper, also the other way, an intriguing fantasy piece for a little while himself there a couple of seasons ago. What's your takeaway here? Do you have any confidence that PLD can be anything fantasy relevant, or is his goose cooked?
Look, this is just laughable at this point from Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, it's so funny. This guy gets traded to the LA Kings. He signs the $8 million 8-year deal with them. I believe that's the contract.
8-year, $8.5 million deal.
$8.5 million for 8 years. He gets 1 year done in the LA Kings. They saw what they saw, and they're like, get him out of here.
He signed this deal on June 27th last year. He didn't even last a full year.
Didn't even last a full year with the LA Kings. They saw what he was doing out there. They saw the attitude. They saw the work ethic that he puts in on a nightly basis. And they said, get this man out of here. We're sending him out back to the Eastern Conference. He lands with the Washington Capitals. Speaking of fantasy value, though, this might actually benefit his fantasy value tremendously. Because as poorly as he was playing with the LA Kings, the Washington Capitals need a player of this potential and caliber. And if he can get into the top 6, which I believe he will be playing in the top 6 group, he will be getting more average ice time on.
For sure.
He will be playing with TJ Oshie. I know Alexander Ovechkin and both are both left wingers, so they most likely won't be playing unless they're on the first power play unit. But honestly, there's not much worse that can happen with Pierre-Luc Dubois' fantasy value. He was garbage last year. He was draftable and then droppable. And then you really couldn't even pick him up on a week-to-week basis because he was just that bad. He was getting no peripheral stats. The points were down. I mean, again, for me personally, it can't get any worse than what we just saw with him. I still think he's going to be a draftable player, but honestly, he's still a draftable player. There's no question about that. We're talking about if we're in a 16-team league and there's 20 rounds, he's definitely getting taken at least in the 20th or 19th round. I think anything after the 15th is where he should be going. 15, 16, 17, honestly, because he still has a good amount of fantasy value. Especially now going to the Eastern Conference. He's going to be in the top 6. He's going to be getting a lot more average ice time. So that's number one. Pierre-Luc Dubois is still a fantasy asset, but you got to wait until at least the 15th or 16th round. That's just off the top of my head of where I believe he should be going and what he's done over the last couple of seasons. But with the Darcy Kuemper trade as well, a part of this shows me a lot about what the Washington Capitals look at and feel with Charlie Lindgren. Charlie Lindgren's going to be the number one guy in Washington now. So he's going to be a fantasy goaltender to target as your second or third fantasy goaltender. And then I also love this on the Darcy Kuemper side going to the LA Kings. I think this is going to be massive for Darcy Kuemper and his fantasy value moving forward as well.
Let's also remember Darcy Kuemper, this is his second stint with the LA Kings. And I was just reading a spot here. He was in his last go around with LA. He was 10-1-3 with a 2.10 goals against and a .932 save percentage in 19 starts back in the 2018 season. So he's comfortable playing out west, Steele. And maybe this is the exact thing both players need because Charlie Lindgren took that crease from him. He is the number one guy. And your point about it being very indicative of where the front office is laying their hand and their confidence, it is Charlie Lindgren. And I actually wholeheartedly agree with your fire take on that second or third goaltending option for Charlie Lindgren because starting goaltenders don't go around very often in terms of you can almost guarantee that Charlie Lindgren is almost for sure going to get the complete run out as that number one guy.
Yeah.
Not much challenge from any other goaltender in Washington that I know of, Steele. So Very, very astute points from you, good sir. I think the Pierre-Luc Dubois angle could be sneaky. He is definitely a 60-point player. He just struggled last year. He also is good at filling out the peripherals when he's on his game. We're going to be on ours the rest of today's episode, and we're taking a look at Philip Hronek's contract right around the break, and that's going to take us into our top 10 fantasy D-men in the NHL today. Speaking of which, today's episode, it's brought to you by our friends at Game Time. When you're going to your favorite events, you never want a stressful ticket buying experience. That's why Steele and I both love using the Game Time app or buying Blue Jays tickets. And all summer long, any MLB teams that you want to see, you got to be checking out Game Time. Last minute tickets, flash deals, and zone deals, and easy to buy MLB tickets for every event in your area with views from your seat in the venue. You know exactly what you're getting with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $20 off your first purchase. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Nailed the spelling that time, Steele. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review, and make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming from Fox Sports or ESPN. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, news, and opinion, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, plus the free Amazon Fire TV channel apps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to our team here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen. We really do appreciate it. We are going to continue our top 15 fantasy defenseman list. We're going to go 10 through 6, but real quick, we got to mention the Philip Hronek signing with the Vancouver Canucks. Sir. What was it? 6 years, 7-year deal, $7.25 million?
8-year deal with an AAV of 7.25. And here, very first and foremost, Steele, the message I sent you last night said, I feel like that's too much term and a bit too much money. And then I'm out there reading today, listening to experts on TSN, ESPN, and otherwise who know far more about hockey than I assumed, saying that Patrick Allvin deserves some stick taps and a pat on the back for getting the deal done at what he did, because apparently, Steele, there were rumors out there that he was looking for $8 or more million. So I don't know what's going on here, but at first I thought that was a little bit long-term and a lot of money. But when you look at what Philip Hronek brings to the table, just at least in terms of the Vancouver Canucks' ability to win hockey games, you and I look at that number sometimes and think, I think anyway, what about the fantasy value correlated to the guys who make that kind of money? And it definitely seems high. However, he plays the power play. He plays the penalty kill very well. He had 43 assists last year and almost 50 points. And my last point on this before I turn it back to you is, he does play and fit alongside Quinn Hughes very, very well. And I think that is what all of those angles playing into Patrick Allvin's hand here. He sees Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronek as his top pairing for the next 6 or 7 years at least. And to be honest, I don't actually hate it from the sense of being able to throw wrinkles at the opposition of offense, a little bit of grit and skill. So from that side of things, I like it. I still think 8-year deal for a guy who has, perennially been in the 30-point range or lower seems like quite a bit of an overpay, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I'm completely fine actually with the 8-year term. I'm not fine with the AAV here. What was it? You said 7.25. Yeah, 7.25 million is too much for a guy who just had a career high of 48 points. It's the first time he's done it in his career. Like you said, it's been a perennial 25 to 37 point guy over the span of his first 6 seasons in the NHL with the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, give or take.
First season with the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, career high 48 points. He only had 11 power play points. So, again, when you've got Quinn Hughes on your team, Quinn Hughes is going to be quarterbacking that power play. Still tons of fantasy value with this guy. I mean, the peripherals are solid. 148 shots, 87 blocks, 104 hits, 30.
I had him on my team this year.
38 penalty minutes, and then 48 points. But again, when we're not speaking fantasy wise right now, 8 years is fine. He's 26 years old. Lock him up for that long. but 7.25 for a guy who, again, 48 points. He is pretty solid on the defensive end. He brings the physicality. I said that to you. I think it's $1.25 million over of what I would have been paying him, or what I believe he should have got. But regardless, he's been nicely paired with Quinn Hughes. They play really good hockey together. They're, Philip Hronek plays really good in the defensive end as well. He was career high plus 33 this season, which was great for him along with Quinn Hughes. Sure. Struggled a little bit in the postseason, might I add.
Struggled down the stretch too. He started real hot.
$7.25 million is a little too much for me, but they get the deal done. They lock him up. And look, the Vancouver Canucks have locked in a few guys over the last 2 seasons. JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, Philip Hronek now, Quinn Hughes, obviously. This team is looking for their future. They've got it right here with that core right now. And right now, look, they struggled in the postseason, the second round. We all know Elias Pettersson struggled, but this is their future. They got to get it done.
Elias Pettersson still looking for his long-term deal. Also, this is going to impact what they have to do with Tyler Myers, Nikita Zadorov, and also there's still Elias Lindholm out there to get done.
Yeah.
So to me, this signifies Patrick Allvin wanted to invest in his top blue line pairing, and he did just that. We're going to talk about that blue line right now, Steele. And since I already went off with my number 10 early in Josh Morrissey, why don't you just start with your 10th and 9th, and we'll get through this list very quickly. Just to leave it at this with Philip Hronek, going into last season, after what I saw him do as a 25-year-old in Detroit, I had my eye on him as a guy who, once he shifted to Vancouver, could his offense go up? And I know that's easier to be said than done now after he did that. But I think it's fair to say that with Quinn Hughes on his side, he is much more in that 40 to 45 point realm. And like you said, very fantasy relevant. Speaking of which, I know every single player you're talking about is at the top of the D-Men draft board. So who slides in at number 10?
Speaking of the Detroit Red Wings, it's Moritz Seider that comes in at number 10 for me. And I really like where this kid's potential is going with the future. Again, 3 seasons in the NHL, hasn't missed a single game. He's been durable. He's been reliable. Career high in his first season with 50 points, but the back-to-back seasons with 42 points, in his second and third year. But it's really the peripheral stats that speak out to me because I know the offensive potential and the offensive side of things are going to come for this player. But just the peripheral stats. Again, the shots were down this year, only 135 shots. I know he can do better than that, but 213 blocks and 211 hits on top of that with 51 penalty minutes. He's a banger league beauty. I believe this is a defenseman and a player that can get up to 55, 60 points easily with the talent that he's surrounded with, not on the blue line, but up front in the top 6 group. Lucas Raymond has taken a huge step as well in his career this past season. So I'm looking forward to seeing Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider both take huge strides this next year. But Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat on there, who had a little bit of a down season as well and went a little bit cold at times throughout the season. I expect him to bounce back in a big way offensively in the goal scoring area. But again, I really like where this Detroit Red Wings team is going right now. Alex Lyon was an absolute huge surprise in the crease as well. Hopefully Billy Husso comes back and he can take the reins maybe.
He's supposed to be healthy, so that's an intriguing
supposed to be
angle.
Healthy, so it's very intriguing. But for me, it's Moritz Seider. He brings all the peripheral stats that I'm always looking for from a defenseman. And again, the sky is the limit for this player offensively. I think he's going to get up to 60 points this upcoming season.
I totally could see it. I could see it going higher over the course of his career, but I don't think it even matters when it comes to him in fantasy because we know he is such a physical presence and he just seems to play the game correctly, Steele, at both ends of the ice. And that tells me he's going to eat a lot of minutes for the rest of his career. Much like the rest of these players, Steele, he's going to be a Norris threat at some point in his career. I don't know if it's now. He's still so young. But he is getting there. And when I look at the rest of this list, not only have they already won them, they are right there in the mix. And when I look at Adam Fox at number 9 in my spot, he came in the league. He's only 25 years old, Steele. It seems like Adam Fox has been anchoring that blue line in New York for a decade. He comes into the league, finishes 4th in Calder voting. His second year in the league, he wins the Norris. Then he finishes 5th in Norris voting in last year, 2nd in Norris voting. This guy is money around the 75 to 80 point range. I know he's only topped out at 74, but this year he has 73 and 72 games, so we know he can hit that 80 and 82 game mark. So 123 shots on net, chips in with some penalty minutes as well. The fact that I like Adam Fox this much also ties with what else is going on in New York over the last couple of years, because his plus minus numbers are always sensational. Plus 28 a year ago, plus 21 this year. So in categorical leagues, yeah, he might not jump off the page with 137 shots, but he still brings so much value. And he's just honestly, Steele, one of my favorite D-men in the NHL. And at 25, he's already knocked on the door for multiple Norris trophies. This guy is one of the best in the business.
He is really good, and I'll be talking about Adam Fox a couple of spots up from the number 9 position. But we got to get to our ad read and our sponsor, Ultimate Hockey GM. This episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Hockey GM. Hey, Locked On Fantasy Hockey fans, I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners. Like I said, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your own hockey franchise? Because I know I have. Do you think you could run the Maple Leafs, the Calgary Flames, the Washington Capitals better than the current GM? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for all of you out there who are hockey fans. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, lead it to glory, hire the right coaches and staff, trade players and draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Leafs fan, you know there is no offseason. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want, when you want to. And by the way, Locked On Network listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. So make sure to go check it out. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app. or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We really do appreciate it. All the love and support you show us Monday through Friday. So really do appreciate it. Click the subscribe, leave a 5-star review, hit the follow button. Check us out on Instagram, Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod. Flip's been absolutely killing it with the graphics and the reels. Appreciate that, Flip. I'm going to get to my 9 and 8 spot on my list just to speed things up a little bit on the back end of this episode. Number 9 on my list, I come in with Dougie Hamilton at the 9 position. I'm doing a little bit of a switch on the fly, but Dougie Hamilton's coming in at number 9 for me. Obviously a tough season last year, gets injured, 16 points in 20 games, but the year prior had 74 points in 82 games. So I'm going based off of that one. 74 points in 82 games. We know what this talented young roster looks like. Like you said,
yeah,
Luke
that leaves
Hughes
a lot of intrigue.
A lot of intrigue. Luke Hughes on the back end. Jack Hughes obviously up front. Jesper Bratt's been absolutely killing it.
Yes.
Also on his contract. And so many young players. Dawson Mercer, who struggled a little bit, but I think we both can see the potential of what he
they still have that Holtz kid, too. He's nasty as well.
Alexander Holtz as well. There's just so much young talent up front. And the power play absolutely rocked with Dougie Hamilton back there. So Dougie Hamilton, for me, comes in at number 9. Like I said, 16 points in 20 games. He fills out the peripheral stats very nicely, especially the shots on goal, where he had 275 shots just 2 seasons ago. So he's my number 9 guy. Number 8, real quickly, Mackenzie Weegar comes in at number 8 for me. Career high 52 points in 82 games last year with the Calgary Flames. A part of that deal with Jonathan Huberdeau for Matthew Tkachuk, but a career high season for Mackenzie Weegar at age 30. He had 51 penalty minutes, but the peripheral stats, again, I'm a huge peripheral stats guy. 208 shots, 200 blocks, and 194 hits. When you have stats going up to 200s in each of those categories, the points add up. And that's why even with only 52 points, he was still a top 10 defenseman in the fantasy leagues last season because of those peripheral stats. So Dougie Hamilton at number 9, Mackenzie Weegar comes in at number 8 for me because of what he does offensively as well. 20 goals. I'm not sure if he can get to 20 goals again, but I love this player's offensive ability and what he brings to the Calgary Flames right now, and the peripheral stats speak for themselves.
The peripheral stats for sure. This for me is a reach when you're putting him ahead of so many other really good D-men, and off of one good year, I don't see him going anywhere near 20 goals. However, based on the fantasy production, it's not completely obscene, but there are a number of other men. He wouldn't have even caught honorable mention for me. However, moving on, because now we're getting into this realm, Steele, that all of these guys, I already mentioned Adam Fox, perennial Norris threats, and they will be for a number of years to come. And I know this guy's higher on your list, and I'm fine with that. Noah Dobson is one of the best skaters in the NHL, and his skating ability creates offensive chances unlike many other D-men that I've ever seen at his age. And this is also for a guy that has to play on the New York Islanders. He had 70 points, Steele, on the New York Islanders, and also brought 84 hits, 180 block shots, 174 shots on net, 36 penalty minutes. And you know what I'm going to say with this player just touching 24 years old? He is entering his prime, and as a 12th overall draft pick, shout out a good PEI, Summerside PEI boy, by the well. Also, I just think he is just scratching the surface. I don't know what your take is fully on Noah Dobson and whether he wants to stick around as a New York Islander for his entire career, but wouldn't he absolutely be a beautician on a bigger market team with a little bit more offensive firepower? This guy's getting Evan Bouchard-like numbers if he's able to play with some of the talent like that, and I know that's easy to say because of who Bouchard has, but Noah Dobson, for me, he's coming in at the 8 spot, Steele, and I really do think he is a fantasy player on the rise who should be taken even higher than he was last year.
He will be taken higher, and I'll be talking about Noah Dobson on next episode because he cracks the top 5 for me. At number 7, like you mentioned, Adam Fox, 3 seasons in a row of 70 plus points. He fills out the block. He fills out the blocks as well. I would love to see this guy shoot the puck way more. He was averaging. I would love to see this guy shoot the puck more. I mean, 5 seasons in a row of less than 160 shots. This past season, 137 shots. It's not good enough from your number 1 defenseman on the blue line, who also runs the power play. Adam Fox needs to continue shooting the puck more. The blocks are great. The hits, he's not a physical player, but that's fine. He gets the points. You mentioned it all. He comes in at number 7 for me. At number 6, it might be a shock for a lot of people. Probably a shock for you, but Quinn Hughes comes in at number 6. Quinn Hughes does nothing else than get points. He doesn't block. He's not physical. He doesn't shoot the puck too much as the number 1 defenseman as well, I believe. Look, 92 points as well, career high for him by almost 20 points. 199 shots. That's a great category, but only 55 blocks and 29 hits. The peripherals aren't the greatest. Again, I think this is a perfect spot because I looked at the different fantasy leagues. Quinn Hughes didn't crack the top 5 in most fantasy leagues in fantasy points. He came in at number 6 fantasy point wise, and that's where I have him. So I'm leaving him at number 6. Look, a career year, 92 points is absolutely stellar. I don't know if he'll get 92 points again. I really don't. He's obviously going to get, I believe he's going to be a perennial 80 plus point player. I just don't know if he's going to get 92.
When you take a look at talking about that same angle with Mackenzie Weegar repeating things like that, or players like Mike Matheson repeating big years, and you take a look at Quinn Hughes, a draft choice of 7th overall, and then his progression over his career, 53 points, then 68 points, then 76 points, then 92 points, I would actually tend to disagree with you and think that maybe he can replicate 90 points with somewhat relative ease. However, it is still 92 points. He's going to probably be the Norris winner. I'm going to talk about him a little bit higher. You're placing a lot of emphasis on peripheral categories and those statistics, which I cannot hate on you for, good sir. And let me just spit out number 6, Victor Hedman. You spoke about him yesterday. I'm higher on him for the reasons that you are kind of speaking with, even though this year he actually went more beast mode in the offensive end and his peripheral numbers took a little bit of a dip. This guy is a perennial Norris Trophy threat. I keep saying that. And that doesn't usually translate into fantasy success when you talk about other trophies. But in the NHL and D-men, Norris trophies usually mean a guy putting up at least 80 or 90 points. I know Victor Hedman has put up 85 in his career. Last year at 76, I think is much more around his realm, maybe even a little bit lower. But that means along with the team he is on, Steele, he is still one of the most reliable D-men. That's another thing. The guy is a warrior. And even when he is banged up and he misses a couple of games here and there, he's still in the regular lineup. And coming in at number 6, before we get to 5 till 1 on Saturday's episode, we'll be back for the Stanley Cup final breakdown on Friday. I got Rasmus Dahlin. This guy follows up a season a year ago where he had 132 block shots and 105 hits, Steele, with 195 hits and 154 block shots. Yeah, the points were down, and 73 the year before might be a little bit high. I think he can hit that once again with relative ease, and it's the Buffalo Sabres overall that took a dip last year. His offense was a result of it, but he comes in at number 6, and he is definitely one of my favorite blue liners in the game today at only 23 years old.
A little bit higher on my list, but he definitely cracks the top 5. So many great fantasy hockey defensemen out there to keep an eye out. Obviously, we know who's going to be number 1, so we don't really need to talk about that too much, but number 1 is going to be fun. The top 5 is going to be fun. We're going to break it down on the next couple of episodes. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports today. They've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.